All right, hello and welcome back to the channel. Tonight I wanted to talk about Dave Ramsey. So let me just start out here with a quick disclaimer. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. I'm a working man. Dave Ramsey's a multimillionaire. This is a working man and a car guy's critique on Dave Ramsey and his team's car buying advice. This is meant to be food for thought and debate. I'm not a definitive authority when it comes to these topics. These are my opinions, and if you disagree, I would invite you to comment and debate respectfully. And with that, getting into it, the reason why I wanted to do this is if you've seen TikTok or Instagram, there's a clip that gets remixed of Dave Ramsey saying, if the total value of things you own with motors in it is half of your net worth or your annual income, I don't remember exactly, you're never going to be successful. And of course, as car guys, we remixed this and memed this to death, where the sentiment is, as car people, we don't care. But it got me thinking. I wanted to look into what he actually tells people, what his advice is. And to be honest, I set out kind of on the attack. And while I found a lot that I disagree with, and I'll get into that, there was surprisingly a lot of good information. And so let me just dive into it, and I'm just going to give you guys just a little bit of context here. So if I go over here, give me a second. All right, so the first question I had was, if you listen to Dave Ramsey's show, he talks about the different times he's been in beater cars or is down on his luck and just making it work. So it brought me to the question of, what does he own now? And this is 21 Motoring. And again, every video and article and stuff I pull up here is going to be linked in the description, so you can go back and look at this later after the video. Dave Ramsey's car collection, 2023, and net worth. I'm not going to dive too much into his net worth, but it does say estimated net worth of 200 million with 150 million in property holdings. So he has, according to this collection, he has a 1959 Jaguar XK 150S valued at $280,000, a 1976 Jaguar XKE 4.2, $108,000, a Porsche 911X at $127,900. I had to look this one up. A 1933 DeSoto Airflow. Let me just do a quick Google so you can see what that looks like, because I didn't know what it looked like. So here's one right there above my head. They didn't have a picture down below, so that's why I show you there. Surprisingly, the cheapest thing on the list at $17,700. A 1975 Stingray Corvette at $52,800. And a 1966 Mustang convertible at $85,000, and a 1948 Chrysler Town and Country at $190,500. So there's the XK 150, XKE 4.2, which is probably the prettiest thing I've seen in that collection. Not his 911, but a 911. And then, of course, you know what the rest of these look like, but I'll Google the Town and Country really quickly, because again, I was thinking the minivan, of course, not at that price though. But so that's, at the time of this article, what they reported that he has car-wise. I would imagine he still has some kind of a beater commuter car, but the article didn't say or didn't elaborate, because any of these cars, with the exception of maybe the 911, is not something you would necessarily daily. So getting into it, I'm going to get into one of his videos here. Give me 1 second. So the first video is, how do I buy a car without going into debt? And it was a guy who calls in, his car's dead, and he wants to get a loan for $10,000 to get a car. So let's get into that video.
Hi, Josh. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Dave?
Better than we deserve, sir. How can we help? Good. Before I start, I just want to say God bless y'all guys and thank you so much. I've been watching a lot of your videos here recently, and I'm working
Speed
on
it up a little
baby
bit.
steps.
Well, thank you, sir.
I'm done with baby step one, and I had a car problem. I got my car paid off a year ago, but it blew up, and I need a new vehicle, but I don't have the cash saved to just buy one, and I'm going to try. Well, and I'm becoming very anti-debt too, but the only way I know how to do that is get a small car loan under 10,000, preferably 7.
You don't have any money?
Nothing saved up.
Okay.
I mean,
what's the car you were driving? What was it worth before it blew up?
I don't know the Kelly's Blue Book. It was a 2007 Toyota Camry.
Okay. So what would you think it was worth?
I'm going to pause this a couple of times and do commentary, of course, so I don't get flagged. But just a side note, this video was put out by Dave Ramsey's Highlights 4 months ago, so I'm assuming it was fairly accurate as to that point for pricing information.
What would you guess?
I think I could probably sell it for around 3,000.
Before it blew up?
Before it blew up. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So there's no need to get a $7,000 car then. You were driving a 3 before this happened.
Right.
Okay. So we could buy a $3,000 car and break even. Let's start with that. What's your household income?
After our tithe, we a month we bring in $4,411.
Okay, good. And how much is your rent?
We don't have rent or mortgage. My wife inherited her house by her grandfather who passed away a few years ago.
That's good news. Okay. And both of you work outside the home?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Kind of want to let you guys see a lot of the context here, but also, forgive me, some of this stuff plays out a little slow. There were a few videos I actually didn't include because of how slow that played out, but let's keep going.
And you currently have one car that's running, right?
Yeah, it is. It's on loan. It's my wife's truck. It's we pay $475 a month for it.
Ooh.
Okay, so it's got a loan on it, but you own one other car, a $500 car payment on a $4,000 take-home pay. Ouch, that's no fun. And you don't own another car, right? You don't own a third car, do you?
No, sir.
Okay. What's your tractor worth?
I don't have a tractor.
What's your lawnmower worth?
This is going to be real embarrassing, but I don't have a lawnmower.
Okay. It's not embarrassing. What would be embarrassing is if you told me you had a $7,000 zero turn. That would be embarrassing, okay?
I absolutely agree with that statement.
Okay, because I'd be selling it to buy you a car. Okay, so you're doing good, Josh. You're passing the test so far. You got a lot of common sense. I'm just looking around here because sometimes
I just got married 5 months ago.
Okay, good. Very good. So you married this car payment. Okay. Okay. What do you do for a living?
I'm a housekeeper at a university.
Okay.
And my wife's a welder at a factory.
Excellent. Okay. All right. So your car with the blown engine will probably bring $1,500 at the salvage yard, maybe more.
I hope so. That would be a lot more than I was thinking.
Yeah, $1,000 to $1,500 it'll bring.
I thought 1,500 was a little generous, but maybe 1,000 to 1,500 shouldn't be too far off. But I don't know. I scrapped a Prius one time and got $400 for it, and that was just get it off my lawn kind of thing. So that might even be kind of generous, depending on what the salvage yard nearby him is going to pay, especially for a car that's that common.
Or some old boy will give you that because he's going to put an engine in it. Okay.
Okay.
I don't want you to put an engine in it. You don't fix $3,000 cars. Those are throwaway cars. Okay.
That's kind of the stuff I wanted to get into. Now, I don't think, maybe for it being a Camry, sure, you could justify getting rid of it, but we kind of got to get out of this mentality of throwing away cars. Someone who should put an engine in it and keep it running if the rest of it is in good shape and the rest of the parts are worth it. But again, $1,500 scrap value. This is where he's about to get into why I selected this video.
Right.
So I'll tell you, you can go the route you wanted to go, but I wouldn't recommend it. And you're brand new to our stuff, so our stuff can sometimes feel awfully extreme. But one of the things I found is if I'm going to break a series of bad habits or principles in my life, I have to adopt the extreme to complete the transformation in my heart. Okay, so when we went broke, Josh, I drove a borrowed car for 4 months. I'm not suggesting you have a car you can borrow, but I'm just telling you what I did. Okay, what I did was I drove a 1978 Cadillac with 478,000 actual miles on it. The predominant color was Bondo, and the vinyl roof was torn loose across the front. So when you drove it, it filled up with air and looked like a parachute on a Bondo buggy. It was the most embarrassing hillbilly car you can think of.
Okay, so that's why I kind of started this video with reading off the list of collection of what he has now. Everything I heard in a lot of these videos is him talking about when he was broke, because that's pretty much a lot of the people that are calling in. And I'm not really going to dispute his financial advice in general, because that's not my area of expertise. Let's keep going.
And I drove that car for 3 months, one 10-year period. That's what it felt like. 10 years. It felt like 10 years, and it was only 3 months. But, buddy, I saved some money during that 3 months because I'm getting rid of Bondo buggy, right? Highly motivated. That's what I was. So I'm going to suggest you do something weird like that. Like, let's sell this car for $1,500 and go buy a $1,500 car that runs and drive it for 4 months. And during that 4 months, you can buy it. It's a garage sale car. It's ugly. It's got hail dents in it, but it runs.
Okay, that is the key point of why I selected this video, and something I vehemently disagree with. I agree it's never a smart decision to get into debt, but even 4 months ago, a $1,500 car, we're approaching the territory of it overheats, it needs a head gasket, it needs an engine, it needs a transmission. You have to have the right people in your life, that maybe a family member selling you a car anymore, to get a decent running car for $1,500. I wouldn't trust a $1,500 car right now with what you see on Craigslist and Marketplace. I mean, if that $1,500 car runs, they usually tell you in the description, it will run, but bring a trailer anyway, because I don't think you'll make it home, or there's a very good chance something could go wrong on it. So, and again, he said $1,500 car for 4 months. And again, this video is 4 months ago. So, again, I would challenge you, Dave, where would you find this $1,500 car? Show me $1,500 cars that are mechanically sound enough to drive for 4 months, because what you could end up doing is spending $1,500 on a car and ending up with another blown engine or another major repair bill. And I don't think what he was wanting to do is that unreasonable. And kind of the solution that I came up with, and I'm going to have to rework the math a little bit because I didn't catch that the math I came up with was the $500 a month payment that Dave Ramsey summed it up as, not the $475 he said it actually was. So if it was a $500 a month payment, and we assume an 84-month loan term, that would bring the purchase price of the vehicle to $42,000. For a truck, that's not crazy. If we blindly estimate the depreciated value of the vehicle, we could say you could easily have a $30,000 truck. Hopefully that's the case. In his case, the math might not math very well. It's a good chance that they could have a truck that's worth less than $30,000. But if they did have a $30,000 truck, what one solution that he didn't offer in this clip is you could take it to a dealer and trade in the one truck to get into two, hopefully sale price $10,000 cars, but then out the door closer to 15, and either break even, or in some cases the dealer will cut you a check if what you're trading in is worth more than what you have. Now, assuming it did say they still owe money on the vehicle, so you would still carry that debt in a loan, but you already have it. And if you divide the one car into two economical, reliable cars of lesser value, you still have the same amount of debt, and now you have two cars. If the truck they have is worth enough, that would have been a much better option than telling somebody to get in, again, 4 months ago, 2023, a $1,500 car. That's a Top Gear challenge, man. Run a $1,500 car that you buy on Marketplace right now for 4 months without dumping a ton of money to it, and that's that's YouTube worthy right now, man. That's a good deal that you got. So that's something I take issue with. There's little things like that that I found. That's why I'm even doing this video, because it doesn't make sense to me. The next video is called "When Should I Replace My Beater Car?" I will say this video is 7 years old, so in this case, a lot of the stuff in this vehicle did not age well as far as the pricing. So context here, in the last video is 4 months old and he's saying buy a $1,500 car. In this video, well, you'll see. Let's get into it.
Jacob is with us in Sacramento. Hi, Jacob. How are you?
I'm better than I deserve, Dave. How about you?
Just the same, sir. How can I help?
So I've got a question about when to sell a car. So,
What's up, Tasty Snacks? We are live.
I drive a 2005 Honda.
Hold on, I'm going to respond to your chat for a second.
181,000 miles.
I'd say, so my friend just bought a $1,600 car and it needs serious work. You're going to spend a lot in oil keeping it lubricated versus buying one that doesn't leak, plus that plus labor. Pretty sure his point is to get something that you're embarrassed to be seen in, or something that sacrifices comfort to motivate you to work. Yeah, and I absolutely agree with that. My point is just, he wasn't being unreasonable. A $7,000 to $10,000 car, like a $10,000 car, you can get something reliable, easy. A $7,000 car, you are kind of starting to deal hunt at that point. You could still end up in the same boat with, you know, some of the buy here, pay here's $7,000-$10,000 cars. They could have some serious mechanical issues. So you still have to shop around and be savvy there. So, I mean, I absolutely agree with you, but yeah. I'm mainly saying this because I believe the vast majority of people calling into his show are not car people. Otherwise, you know, like us, we're just going to go buy what we want and make a bad decision, and we're not going to ask his permission. But let's get back into this video.
Miles on it. And I'm planning to drive it into the ground, but I guess my question is, when do you know it's financially a good idea to get out of that vehicle and not continue putting repairs into it?
You know, the weird thing is that you can hardly ever justify selling a car based on repairs financially. Let me give you an example, okay? If you say, okay, drive the car all the way down to it's a $2,000.
That was one quote I made note of, is that you can hardly ever justify selling a car based on repairs financially. Well, depends on the circumstance. For example, my detail van. If it gets to the point to where that's in the shop all the time and I'm dumping money into it, and I already have to dump a lot of money into it, but it's manageable and it's still new and it's got a lot of life left in it, I believe. But if it was really 200,000 miles up there and I'm just constantly breaking down on me and it didn't feel reliable and it didn't seem worth putting money into, I need that on the road or I'm not making money. So yeah, there's a point where you can financially justify getting a vehicle because the repairs are taking me off the road and causing me downtime. But your average person, like, I know what he's saying. There can reach a point too, though, if you can keep under a $300 a month car payment, where some people's repair bills start to feel like more than that $300 a month on that car payment. That's, I think, the point where people start to feel like, should I buy a new car? Anyway.
Car. It's not yet, but someday, okay? You know, 300,000 miles on it, you've worn the wheels off of it, and you have a $500 or even $1,000 repair, right?
Yeah.
And you say, well, you know, these repairs are killing me. I'm going to go buy a nice another little Honda for $12,000. Well, the first year, that car is going to go down more than the cost of that repair on the old one. You follow me? So almost.
Yeah.
Again, this is why I said that this video didn't age well with time, because, you know, it's not uncommon to start hearing $5,000 to $10,000 for engines being replaced if the whole engine is bad and it's not just a head gasket, or easily $5,000 for a transmission. So, yeah, like if you don't have a good connection to a shop that gives you a good rate on prices and you can get this stuff done cheaply, this could be expensive enough now with our current car market and with parts the way they are and labor the way it is. At the time of this video, that was probably a valid point.
Never can you justify mathematically buying a better car based on the math. Are based on the gas mileage even. Very few people drive enough miles.
Oh, I also wanted to say that as long as he has a running car, that would offset the value of his trade-in, or that trade-in would offset the value of his purchase price. So if you take that into account versus a lot of repairs, there is a time to take the value out of your car and put it into something else, so you have something that is more reliable than what you have. I do generally agree with what he says in a lot of other videos about not buying up, like not going to that next level car or a BMW or some fancy German car if you can't afford it just because you think you can.
To justify the difference on gas mileage, especially as cheap as gas is now. So the whole Prius thing is a freaking joke.
That was another point I wanted to catch out, and this is why this really aged so poorly. When I was selling cars back in 2020, on the new car lot, they could not get rid of the hybrids in 2020 because gas was at the time still cheap enough that nobody really cared. And then it was 2021 that, you know, the Colonial Pipeline shut down for a little while and gas prices started to skyrocket again. And so now people are buying hybrids left and right. And it's funny too, because 7 years ago, I was trashing on Priuses just as much as a lot of us still trash on Priuses today. But now a Prius, because everyone's ditching them to go buy a Tesla, you can get a used second or third gen Prius with around 150,000 miles on it, $7,000, well under 10 grand, and those cars run easily to 300,000 miles, even if you're not taking care of them before the head gasket goes, before you're looking at real serious issues. And the battery's not that bad. It's $2,000 and 8 hours worth of work with basic hand tools. You could do it yourself. It's a long, tedious job, but the battery by itself, there's a good Chris Fix video on how to replace the Prius's battery. And after seeing that video, I'm not gonna lie, I started looking for a Prius, because if you want a beater car you don't care about, I tell people who aren't car people all the time, if you don't care what you're driving, go buy a used Prius. Understand you might have to replace that battery at some point, but other than that, if you just want a reliable car that's going to save you money, a used Prius is not a bad way to go. Just keep in mind, there is that battery, and a couple grand, 8 hours worth of work on a Saturday, not a bad deal.
You know, in terms of figuring out a way to buy a $30,000 car versus a $20,000 car and make up that $10,000 worth of gas mileage, you'd have to drive the freaking thing to the moon mathematically. Okay, so you can't do it based on the math. So what it comes down to is, if you're going to buy a Prius, you're doing that because you're worried about the planet, or whatever you're doing. I mean, on the environmental issues, right?
I do want to know, because I haven't seen a lot of more recent stuff. There is one video at the tail end of this that he did yesterday, but I would like to hear what he says about electric vehicles. I have no idea what his opinions are on that.
Now, in your case, what we're saying is it comes down to hassle factor, and the purchase of the newer vehicle is a small enough percentage of your world that the hassle factor is worth more than whatever that is, you know? And so let's say you're making $100,500, and you go buy a $20,000 car, you pay cash for it, and you move up out of this car that you've driven down to $3,000 in value, and you really don't get anything except reliability for that and a lowered repair bill. But I mean, the difference in $17,000, you'll never get that back in repairs.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? It's just you got a little nicer car. It's a creature comfort.
He traded a $3,000 car for a $1,500 to a $10,000 car that had less miles and was in better shape. That's not bad, especially if he's making $120,000 a year. He should be way under budget then.
And you don't have, you're not sitting on the side of the interstate with your cell phone in your hand trying to figure out how to get off the side of the shoulder here. So, because it's a pain in the butt to break down, right? So, at some point, it's just hassle factor and comfort as a percentage of your net worth and your income. It's a non-issue, so you move up in car, and that's a reasonable thing. But you really can't mathematically justify the expense, because you'd never repair it. I mean, you could rebuild the whole freaking little car, and still.
That was the other thing. Sorry. I just right out of my notes. That quote, you could rebuild the whole freaking little car and still be less than you paid to move up. Like, really? That did not age well. And even back then, I don't really think you could justify that. I think you could easily dump 10 grand into a car that would then not be worth that, as opposed to spending 10 grand and getting a newer car that's going to be more reliable. And the reason I'm taking issue with this, again, I'm not a financial guy. If you want to retire, apparently his stuff is pretty good. I know some people that he has helped them get out of debt when they followed what he's talking about. But I think he's talking to a lot of non-car people. And so knowing that, if they're not willing to put some wrench time in on it, if they don't understand how their car works, I don't really think it's safe for a lot of people to drive a beater anymore. Times have changed. There's a lot of people out there that he might be telling to drive a beater that possibly can't change a tire. That's my biggest critique with this.
Still would be less in it than you paid to move up.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, but I still would tell you to move up at some point, and not bark at you about it. And you know my rule on cars is all of your things with motors in them added together should be less than half your annual income, and you pay cash for them.
That's not a bad rule of thumb, honestly. If I do start to look at that now to think like that, there's people I know, or not know personally, but when you see that jacked up lifted truck that's eventually going to end up on Marketplace for $100,000 and they're pulling up to an apartment, it's like, what's the point?
Okay, yeah, I can do that. The plan is eventually when the element dies to go and get a Subaru Impreza that's used in in our cash flow scenario.
Yeah, and you pay cash for it. And but again, you're moving from the Element, which might be worth $3,000 or $4,000 at the time, and you move up from that into maybe a $15,000 Subaru, right?
Yeah.
Now that was the other thing I wanted to catch in this video, and that's another reason I think it aged badly. 7 years ago, he's trying to get out of this $3,000 Element. Well, Tasty Snacks, I know you're a Honda guy. You know what the Honda Element cult following is like now. That's getting harder and harder to find parts for. It's getting harder and harder to find an Element in good running condition. So this is with that inflation, if he had still had that Element now and it was salvageable, worth putting an engine into, there's somebody out there that would buy that from him, even in non-running condition now. Somebody that has a good running engine but needs body panels, or somebody that needs his running engine to put in theirs. That, again, it's just one of these things that kind of tells me, despite his collection, I don't think he's a serious car guy. He's a real estate guy. Finding a decent Element, yeah, but most everything's from the parts bin. There's a reason why people could address the case here. Yeah, but again, he could do, if it's worth $3,000 7 years ago, what is it worth in 2023? Now that those parts are harder to find, like the body panels are what's valuable now. You're right, not the engine.
Yeah.
That's what, 3 years old or something at that time, and low miles or something, and yeah, do that. And we tell people not to buy a brand new car for these exact same reasons, unless you have a net worth of at least $1 million. Now, once you've got $1 million net worth, the loss in value on a brand new car is a small enough percentage of your world, it's not ruining your life. But when you got...
And that's not bad advice either, but I personally feel like even when I have that, if I get that kind of money, I still don't personally feel a need to buy new. I did it once. I didn't really care for the experience. And I think I will always just go for a slightly used car. You just don't have to buy it as old and as used. And I mean, look at what the guys all around different cars and coffees that have the Ferraris and Lamborghinis do. Most of those guys aren't buying them brand new. Most of them are getting them used because the first owner's eating a bit of depreciation for them, and it brings the value of the price down. And there's a sweet spot where they can buy it, enjoy it for a little while, put a little bit of miles on it, and sell it on and basically recoup their money. And basically drive the car for free if they don't put too many miles on it and they don't trash the thing.
No money and you make $50,000 and you're driving a $30,000 car, that's stupid zone.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Yeah.
You're
go
not
back for that.
got no money and you make, but when you got no money and you make 50 grand and you're driving a $30,000 car, that's stupid zone.
Yeah.
You're not there, but I mean, for
That I think we can all agree with. Like, there's no reason to have that kind of a status symbol when you really can't afford it.
for our listeners' sake, you know that we tell people that because you're just losing your butt every day. Every time you start the car, you lost another $1,000. You know, it's just crazy. And then you scratch your head and wonder why your kid's college funded and funded.
No, body panels won't matter for a beater, to be honest. Only mechanical and safety issues you should be considered. Yeah, no, I was talking about the body panels from the Element, because that's huge with the I want to say van life community, but really it's the I mean, it's like overlanders, car camping people. Like, Elements are good for that. They're decently what Neckier says from Collector Car Feed, that he stuck a whole full-size refrigerator in the back of an Element and closed it. So I mean, it was one of those things where it didn't really catch on at the time, and I'm pretty sure they discontinued it because people joked about it being a toaster and nobody cared. And as soon as they cut off production and as soon as they started getting harder and harder to find, now there's a massive cult following. Not massive, but a decent sized cult following. And you could drive the wheels off of an Element and someone will come tow it out of your yard because they want body panels for that. But yeah, your average beater, who cares?
And that's what we tell people not to do. So you're on track here, but I also want to give people permission to, drive it down till the wheels fall off. That's fine, but go ahead and move up when you've got the cash and when you got yourself in good financial condition. You're out of debt. You got the emergency fund in place. You got some car money above that.
How nice of him to give us permission to move up when we can afford to. When the peasant gets to a certain level of peasant, you can, have a nicer car now. But no, I mean, I point a lot of this stuff out, not because, again, from a financial standpoint, he's going to retire far richer than I probably ever will. I'll admit that. But it just doesn't seem like there's other people that are entrepreneurial on YouTube, and I'm not going to plug some of their channels because I don't agree with a lot of their worldviews. But from a business standpoint, they're very solid. And one thing I always remember listening to a lot of different entrepreneurs say is, the way rich people think is if they find themselves in a situation where they can't afford something, they think about, how do I go out and make that money? And they don't really set a limit in their mind about how much money can I make. And the way poor people think is, how can I save the money? Dave is always talking about, and again, saving money is not a bad thing. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying that's the difference between us and rich people. And okay, cool. So you don't limit yourself in how much you can earn. I'm still trying to figure that one out too. I'm just saying there's a lot of this advice that I don't think he realizes how the market's changing and how it's getting harder and harder for your average person to get into any vehicle, honestly. So many people I know are buying used for the first time now that really once could afford brand new cars and it wasn't a big thing, and now it is a major thing. I think the most of this, that was pretty much the last quote I had on this video. So again, this is in the description if you wanted to see the rest of it, the last minute. For time, I'm just going to move on to the next one, which was, should I get a loan to replace my old car? So this is kind of the theme here. And I'm getting through most of what I disagree with first, and then we're going to move into more of the better advice that his team did have that I think is really on point.
Nick is with us in Dallas, Texas. Hi, Nick. Welcome to the Ramsey Show.
Hi, Dave. Hey. Yeah, if only we could be astounding. So I think I already know the answer to this. I've read all your books and I've watched the podcasts and all the things. And I think that last call, the family that was just on there was really awesome. Honestly, that's probably all I really needed. I'm a new travel nurse. I moved all the way to Dallas, Texas from Richmond, and I ended up getting into a wreck. I got this 2000 Toyota 4Runner, and it's been my baby. It's made it to 250,000 miles, and it's pretty much time to say goodbye. I got it appraised at $8,000 on the first appraisal, and then the second was 2.5, but that guy hasn't called me back, and he's kind of.
I'm just gonna provide context here because it took a little bit more into the video. Appraised at 8,000, he means he got an estimate for the car to be repaired from the wreck. It's not the value of the car, it's how much his repair bill would be. He wasn't very clear about it, but you'll see that in a second.
From a sketchy area, so I think what I'm looking at here is getting a beater, but I'm a little nervous because if I did, I don't know if it'd be so safe on the highways when I go to my next place. And I don't know. My friend, he used to be a car salesman, and he's been trying to tell me that it might just make more sense to go ahead and get a car loan and get something new because of the inflation.
Wait a minute, a car salesman told you this? This is a credible piece.
I mean, got him there, but
Of information.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, wait a minute, dude. Have you gained money?
No. All right. We've been best friends literally since middle school. I mean, he's not trying to.
No,
tell me
dude,
a car
not
on his
him.
lot.
He's out of the picture. He's already discredited himself. He doesn't even work. He's not. He no longer gets a vote because his opinion is dumb. Now let's move on. Do you have any money?
Nah, man. I mean,
no money at all. Okay. You don't have any money in savings at all.
I've got $400.
Okay.
I've got
$0 down, 100% financing. Ooh boy.
The car.
Yeah.
Did you total the 4Runner?
Oh man, it's I mean it's running.
Did you have insurance?
I've got liability.
Oh, you didn't have collision.
That was a mistake.
Okay, so you just lost your car. And it's going to sell broken for how? For $8,000?
Broken, I mean, so $8K was to fix it.
Oh, fix it.
Oh, you're saying you get quotes. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
You don't have $8,000 though.
Nah, definitely not.
And you don't have insurance to fix it. So yeah, before you spend $8,000 to fix this piece of crap, you'd spend $8,000 to buy a car. But in either case, you don't have $8,000. So let's start again. You have $400 to your name.
I've got a credit card, man, but yeah, I know how you feel about that.
Where's your money going? You said you're a travel nurse. That's good money.
All right. Long story short, this guy's partying. I'm gonna see if I can speed this one up a little bit. He's blowing his money.
So anyway, I've made the credit card. Yep. Max told me.
All right. So you got $1,000 to your name. When do you get your next check?
Yes.
When do you get your next check?
I don't know if this guy was drunk right now. When do you get your next check? Yes. All right, let's see if I can get one.
All right. I can only tell you what I would do in your situation. You painted yourself into a really difficult corner because you've saved absolutely no money and you didn't carry collision insurance, which you should have been doing both of those things. Okay? So today we're going to start listening to Dave and George and start doing this stuff. So your next up in your shoes, your back is against the wall. I'd sell the car for $800. I'd take $1,000 of my $1,200. I'd take $1,000 out of the check that's coming Friday, and I'd buy a $2,000 car.
Okay, here we go again. This is 2 years ago. So we're right in the heat of right before the 2022 chip shortage and the used car market explosion and prices going through the roof. So a $2,000 car. And again, let him finish the statement.
I would drive that for 2 to 3 months. Meanwhile, I'm going to save like a crazy man and buy an $8,000 car. And I want you to work like a freaking maniac, like every hour they will give you. And I want you to quit partying.
I lived it up a little bit on the way here.
There it is. That's what I was waiting for. A little bit of honesty out of Nick. Yeah, Dave's exactly right. The whole idea that if you buy a beater car, it's going to explode on the interstate, that's just a load of baloney, and it's justification. My car I'm driving right now.
Okay. It's not, I mean, it can be justification, but it's not a load of baloney if you go buy a $2,000 car and you have no idea what you're looking at and you trust the seller on Marketplace or Craigslist. It just needs a fuel pump. it just needs this one thing, and oh, by the way, here's the part, and get it out of my yard. Like, there's a lot of times, the way I always think about when people say, it just needs this, it just needs that. Oh, by the way, I have the part for you, so all you got to do is put it in. If that's true, take them for their word, and that's true, and now it runs again. Then you find out everything else that's wrong with the car, so you don't get a test drive. You get a gamble. And that's basically a $2,000 car in most cases. You have to hunt and hunt and hunt to find anything in the $2,000 range, even 2 years ago, that you could get 2 months, 4 months out of. Because the plan here, and again, if you could pull this off, I think this is an accomplishment. You buy an absolute beater car. Nothing goes wrong with it to the point to where you can still drive it, and then once you save money, you trade it in. Like, I would think that's a very good accomplishment, but I doubt most people's ability, and I'm sorry if this is you, I don't mean to insult anybody, but I doubt most people's ability who aren't already interested in cars and knowledgeable about cars to do this anymore. It's a huge safety risk. There's plenty of things that are on the road that we see every single day that should not be on the road.
Cost me $6,000, and I've been driving it for almost 5 years.
See, that's his beater cost him $6,000.
And it's a beater, but it runs. It's a Honda. So go get you a cheap car.
Has it ever left you out?
No.
Never left you stranded?
Never.
Not one time.
I trust a $6,000 Honda. That is a safe range to buy a beater in.
So
okay,
look for a good used car that's reasonable right now, and that's not going to be...
Also, wait, I think I did the math on that one too. He bought a $6,000 Honda in 2017. That's what George is saying. So that was 5 years. He'd driven it for 5 years, and he's saying that at the time of this video, which is 2022. So think about how much more car he got in 2017 for a $6,000 Honda. Like, honestly, now that $6,000 Honda he bought goes back to this $10,000 number I'm buying. Like, I think that same car that he bought in 2017 with that mileage, which he doesn't say what the mileage was, but I think a $6,000 Honda in 2017 is probably pretty close to a $10,000 Honda now. So that's what he's calling a beater, and that's a lot of my point with this.
Sweet for $2,000, but you can upgrade.
2000, it's ugly but reliable.
I want it as ugly as possible.
Here's the thing, Nick. Your situation is
ugly but reliable.
You're painted in this corner because you're living for the moment. Your entire whole calendar and your checkbook is YOLO. It's every bit.
Yeah, you only live once. So that's the main points of that video too. Again, the rest of it, he's just kind of lecturing this guy for partying. I don't really think there was that much relative information in that, but again, video will be in the description, so if you want to check out that video. Next one is 3 things you need to know before buying a car in 2022. And I don't know, because again, this is again a more recent one, and this video is going to have George in it. Now we're shifting into a lot of the stuff that I think they get right. So it's kind of nice. Again, I set out to kind of attack Dave Ramsey a lot more than I realized when I started doing the prep for this I was going to do, because then I started finding the rest of these videos, and a lot of the rest of this information is solid.
Everyone's losing their minds. The car market has lost its mind. Up in here, and we are both are in the market for a car, and it's a very stressful time when you're trying to do it.
All right, now here was my point to this. In the earlier video, that was I forget how many. Right before this, really, it was earlier in 2022. Now the car market's exploded by the time of this video, and George had been bragging about driving around that $6,000 Honda Civic for 5 years. So, you know, and I'm not gonna lie, I had to buy a car in 2022, but there are different circumstances to that. But him driving that beater, and this is somebody who could have afforded to move up sooner. Had he moved up in early 2022 or in 2021 and bought something reliable then, he would have skipped the madness of the used car market that was 2022. So all that money he saved driving that beater for a while and not rolling that into something else more reliable a little bit sooner. And it's hindsight, it's timing, like you can't predict that stuff. But again, it's just kind of my point. They're not car guys. They didn't see it coming. They didn't think to have a better vehicle. And then we were all kind of taken by surprise when that happened. But let's get into this one.
Especially with cash.
Okay, so you are currently purchasing one. I did recently, a few months ago. It was the strangest interaction I've ever had when it comes to transaction. It got to where I wrote a check, and I was looking at the salesman, and because it was like, hey, well, we need to like talk to you about this, and you know, if you finance it here, and I said, look, dude, I got a check, and I felt like I was talking to my son. I said, I want to give you this, and I want you to give me that.
You
it's
have a thingy.
Right
I have
there.
money.
You have the key. I can see it. Just give me that, and I'll give you this. Like, well, you know, we gotta go through these meetings, and I said, I'm not gonna buy any of your special clear coats. I don't want any extended warranty. I just want that. Could you just take this? Can I just give you this?
That's some solid advice. I really don't agree with. I don't recommend anybody buy any of the things they try to sell you in the finance office, and they're going to be big on that. And so when you're that cash buyer, that this is the out the door price, this is what we agreed on, this is what we negotiated on, they're like, okay, yeah, great, that's cool, but, and then they try to, that's how the dealerships really make their money. So this is what I found out. I didn't realize they were telling people about this stuff, because this was something I've wanted to talk about for a long time. It's because I see so many people buying this stuff, and it doesn't serve you, it serves them.
Can I just give you this, man? It was such an event that I ended up leaving, and then we called back, and I said, hey, how about this? Just bring it by. We literally like a mile and a half down there. Just drop it off here. I'll give you this giant check for it. Dude, it was easier to buy my house than it was to buy a car with cash. Wow. And you're in the middle of it now. Has it gotten worse?
Yeah, I just tried yesterday. And here's the thing.
Okay, so fill me in on this.
Literally,
American,
I'm going to pitch this article to you to prove what I'm experiencing.
Okay.
Wall Street Journal. Here's the headline. Car dealerships don't want your cash.
Oh, there you go.
They want to give you a loan.
There you go.
Buyers say dealerships are pushing them to borrow because they make more money that way. The hot car market is giving them the opportunity.
So every time in history, it's if you'll pay with cash, it's actually cheaper.
Yeah.
We'll get the deal done faster. And now they're upcharging you, right?
Yes, and the numbers show this, John. If you finance a car, the dealership makes $3,000-$4,000. If you just pay cash, they're going to make hundreds of dollars, maybe 1,000. So they're
Having sold cars before, the math is accurate on this.
making way less if you pay cash. They're making money off the financing deals. If they can get you to finance, they get kickbacks from the lenders. They have their own financing. They're making money from that. And so it's actually increasingly difficult to buy a car with cash. Now, this is not your excuse, America, to go, well, I'm going to go get a car loan because it's too hard to pay with cash. I'm not going to get a discount. You still have to pay with cash.
And I would encourage anyone who can save up the money and afford to buy a car in cash to do it. Again, I'm just speaking for the average person here, and most of us can't afford that. Most of us are going to have to get a loan to get a reasonably reliable car. It's not a great situation, but the question, if we're buying a reasonable car, we need to ask ourselves, how do we make more money? Anyway.
Will not go into debt for a car. But here's my experience, John. I said, hey, I'm not going to finance. I was just straight up with them, which, problem number one, honesty. Shouldn't have done that. And they go, okay, well, it's going to cost you $1,000 more if you're going to pay in full. And I went, okay, well, I guess you're not getting my business then. And so I just said, hey,
let's be clear. The check you're about to write's a decent-sized check.
Yeah.
It's a good check.
Yeah, and so I said, here's what I'm willing to.
I'm going to shift gears for a second, and there's a guy on YouTube. Oh, sorry, not YouTube. He might be on YouTube, but he's on Instagram called Russ Flips Whips. I'm going to play his video here for real quick, and he details that phenomenon. So, yeah, I'll let him get into it.
The short answer is yes, but let me explain why. Disclaimer, my dealership.
Let me refresh that.
More money if you decide to pay cash. The short answer is yes, but let me explain why. Disclaimer, my dealership doesn't do this. I think it's greedy, but there are dealerships local to us, and I keep getting asked about this, so let me explain how they can get away with this legally. Let's say you see a car online, it's priced pretty good, and you go in, and you're working up the numbers, you saw the price online, and you tell the dealership you're paying cash, or even a credit union check, because to a dealership, a credit union check is still considered cash. And then at the end of the negotiation, whenever you get your trade worked out, you tell them you're paying cash or you're financing with your credit union, they can legally bump up the price $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, really as much as they want. But here's how they get away with it. If you look at the fine print, and if they're not doing this in the fine print, this is illegal, but a dealership near me at the very bottom of the page that no one ever reads, in the fine print of a local dealership to me that does this, they say financing $1,000 rebate included, meaning that the price they're advertising includes a rebate of $1,000 for financing with them, meaning anyone that doesn't finance with them has to pay that extra $1,000. I think this is extremely greedy. I would personally never buy from the dealership that would really just, it's false advertising at the end of the day. It's tricky. They're playing the game. It's legal. There's no law against it. I think it's greedy to not advertise a price that anyone can pay. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this. And for more content like this, follow Russ Flips Whips.
Yeah, follow Russ Flips Whips. He does a lot of really good funny videos about bad customers and bad salesmen. He pokes fun at the sales industry all the time, and you'll learn a lot, and the vast majority of his content's just quite funny. If you have any experience with the dealer scene at all, let's see what you see. I think this rebate thing only applies to dealerships. I've never seen it from a mom and pop. Yeah, generally speaking, you're not going to see it from a mom and pop's place. But you know, a lot of people, those kind of mom and pop places, they're, again, something for guys like us that we can hunt for the deal. Any thoughts on auto auctions? I don't actually have experience going to any. I'd like to. Odessa is owned by Carvana now, so that's something to be aware of. I'd like to know more about the process, honestly. It looks to me like, I guess you buy the cars blindly. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I know people would glass chalk on the window like mileage and it runs, or bad trans. So they try to disclose big things so you can walk the lot and see, as far as I'm understanding, but they're not like letting you test drive it. So, you know, for guys like us, if we have a car project or we're looking for something specific, like, okay, maybe an auction, but for the public, beyond the state auctions where they're getting like the retired police cruisers, where the state's not selling non-running garbage, because I know a lot of people that can't afford newer cars will do the state auctions. That's probably not a bad thing for people who aren't car people. We see all those old cop cars on the road, and they are maintained, but they're also beaten. So, you know, who knows? You're definitely not the best for the average Joe, or someone not mechanically inclined. Like, it's a huge gamble. It's a gamble that we're probably willing to take when we're looking for certain stuff. But like, I'm really making this video for the average person that's not car people. I hope car people can find my content enjoyable, but again, I set out with education in mind with this channel. So back to what they were saying about buying a car in 2022.
Pay. You call me back if you can do that. Otherwise, it's the end of the conversation.
I also like that. They both were talking about walking out. It's something people don't do enough in cars. Like, I'll let them continue.
And that's what happened. And I just got a text while we're doing the show that was like, hey, let's talk ASAP. I've got some updates for you. And so this is the digital version of the walkaway.
God, I don't even know what that is.
So here's what this comes down to. You just walk out of the dealership.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and they chase you out and go, no, John, come back in. And so here's what I want you to know. The person with the most patience, the most information, and the most options always wins in any spending decision.
100%. This is why a lot of people are getting taken for a ride in their car deals, is they're not doing their research. They're not shopping around. They don't know the car they're buying. It's not hard to, if you know what car you want and you've done your research and you've done your homework, it's not hard to show up at particularly a used car dealership where they sell all kinds of cars, and know more about the car than the salesman does. Now, if you show up to Toyota and buy a Toyota, he should know all of the features and all of the buttons and absolutely everything that you can get on each trim package. But if you show up to the Toyota dealership and you buy a Corvette, you should know more about that Corvette than that Toyota salesman.
When you're not desperate, you can make a better decision. Yeah. When you have options, you can make a better decision.
When you're willing to walk out the door.
Yes. So here's what I want to tell you guys. Do your research. There's so many avenues online to research the exact car you want, you will know more than the dealership does about that car by the time you walk in there. Number two,
this is not hard because a lot of car salespeople are not car people. The people I work, good people, not trying to say anything bad about any of them, but they got good at sales and they saw sales as their skill set. I was different from them in that I saw cars as my skill set.
I want you to make sure that you know the exact value of your trade-in. And here's the thing. If you've got a trade-in, appraise it before you get the out-the-door price, because otherwise they start finagling it on the back end.
They wind it down
to charge you more.
Yeah.
When you say, no, you said my car's worth $4,000, that's what we're going to do here. And the out-the-door price includes all of the taxes and fees, the dock fees, all that stuff. That is the number we need to aim at. Now, you don't have to say, hey, I'm not going to finance today. You can save that to the end if you really want to, stick the knife in and go slap the check on the table.
See, I'm like you. I'm like, hey, it's a cash deal. I'm going to walk out today with this car. I've already driven
Skip
it. I
the
want that one.
games.
Can we just not play a game?
Yeah, they do the Foursquare, and they go, we can get your payments down to whatever you want.
Yeah, not really that kind of guy.
No.
It's cool.
So here's what I want you to do. Go in with a cashier's check, maybe a little bit below the asking price. Like, here's what I would love to pay for this car. And when they see that check in hand, they're still going to go, well, we could make $26,000 right now, or we can hope that someone finances it in the next month, or we get a car off our lot and get a trade-in. Now, if they go above that cashier's check and you still feel like it's a good deal, that's okay. You can supplement that with your own check, with cash, whatever that looks like. So you don't need the exact number on the table there.
And I do think it's important to call out here. So there's a whole bunch of car dealerships trying to do right by people.
Some good guys
There's
out there.
a great guy, Larry, in Paducah. That's a lot of our people here at Ramsey do business with. Great human being that's trying to help people out, trying to put them in cars. And so this isn't all car dealerships are bad. And I hadn't bought a car in a long time. And it used to be they put something in the paper. I don't know if you remember what those days were like, or they put something online and then you go haggle. I do understand now, like after talking with the guys and getting some more information, that buying a car is different now. The idea you're going to go in and get $8,000 off, those days are not here.
Yes.
Right? So as a buyer, don't be a jerk. Don't be a moron.
Yeah, so that's something I wanted to touch on too. A lot of dealers are trying to get completely away from the haggling, and the reason is because with everything being online, the car down the street has all their cars listed online, the dealer you're at has all the cars listed online. They are constantly pooling that data and comparing their prices, and they're trying to price their cars as competitively as possible to the local market. I want to say when I worked in the industry, we were always looking about a 200-mile range around us because people will travel a couple hours to go buy a car if they can get it for a better price. So you want to cast a wide net there, but the dealers are already beating themselves down looking at what their competition is selling cars for. They know when they put a car up online that if the price advertised isn't competitive, and that's why you get in that instant cash rebate or instant financing rebate situation, because they can undercut their competitor by maybe $1,000 and then surprise you with it if you want to pay cash and you're not financing with them. But in the pre-internet era, and I was too young to buy a car back then, but the culture was, and if you ever get the chance and you're interested in car sales, you want to know, there's a really good movie called Suckers. You're probably just gonna have to go buy the disc. I don't think it's on it'll be on Amazon if you buy the disc, but I don't think it's on any streaming services. It's funny, it's raunchy, it's hilarious, it's behind the scenes, like the car sales culture pre-internet days. And back then, because you had to look through the papers and you had to physically go to these different dealerships, they could kind of make up whatever price they want, and a lot of them did. So that's where this I'm going to beat him down in my negotiation, I'm going to get $8,000, $10,000 off the price came from. And now realistically, if you get $2,000 off the car, you have knocked it out of the park. If you get $1,000 off, you've done well. A lot of times people will just give you $500 if you're kind of tough on negotiation, but I would say go in, look for leverage, not dents and dings and scratches, but broken, features that aren't working. Something in the car that you can tell hasn't been done that needs to be done maintenance wise. That's the kind of stuff that will give you the leverage to beat them down a little bit on their price. And you got to have math behind you. Anyway, back to the video.
Don't squeeze the. I'm gonna
Be
don't
kind.
Be a good human being.
Yeah.
Say this is what I can afford to pay. I want that car. Let's make it. Let's shake hands. And then if you can't, walk out the door.
Yes. But
Walk out the
agreeing
door.
on that out the door price is the key.
Yeah.
Because if you agree on that, then it doesn't matter what they say about financing. No, we agreed. This is the price of the car. And please, please look at the contract. And if there's anything beyond a small dock fee and your sales tax for the state, county you live in, run. If they're trying to tack on all these extra things and warranties they force, walk out of there.
Walk
Go,
out the
I'm not
door.
paying anything but a small dock fee. And if you can get rid of that, that's even better. And then the taxes, which, yes, we have to pay our taxes on sales tax on these cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, taxes and dock fees and a lot of other things, that's the stuff you can really negotiate off. There's reconditioning fees. You can renegotiate that off or down. There's the clear coat protection that they already applied to the car, so they can't take it off the car, but it doesn't mean that they can legally sell it to you until you consent and agree to pay for that, because they advertise the car without it in most cases. So that's the things to look out for, is all the add-ons. That's where you need to be a strong negotiator, because they will drive you hard. Gap insurance is an option. You might want to consider that. You might not. I usually don't, but I have had to pay a gap out of pocket before. So that's the risk you take, but everything else is just the same. It's just an insurance policy. The warranty is an insurance policy. I don't recommend extended warranties. I'll do a rant on that another time.
So do that. Walk in with a cashier's check. Don't walk in with a barrel full of cash, of actual physical dollars. That is a terrible move. It's dangerous. They've got to report it to the IRS. They don't want to deal with that hassle. So, yes, we say pay cash. We don't actually mean take a briefcase like it's an old school movie.
It's kind of baller though.
It is. I've known people who've done it, and they get laughed out of there. They go get a cashier's check. We're not playing that game. So
I'm gonna come back to that point later, but that's pretty accurate. Don't show up with 10 grand in cash, please, for the love of God.
be patient. Do your research. Know your options. Don't go on a Saturday when it's packed out. Go at the end of the month on a weeknight when it's not raining, so that you can actually do the inspection and not be in a rush. And that's going to help you make the best financial decision, and be willing to sacrifice. I know you wanted this exact specification. It's okay. If you've got another option and you're desperate, then you got to deal with that. Yeah. But here's the other thing. Don't buy a car right now unless you absolutely have to.
Yeah, don't buy a car. Ta-da, get it fixed. Clean it.
That's right. James gets it. Now, Ken and I took a call about a Snosberry Jeep, and the wife really wanted this exact Jeep color. It was the only one to get. And we had to talk her off the ledge. And I was like, Snosberry is not even a color. Let's not pretend that you need this exact Jeep at this exact time.
That's like a Willy Wonka.
All right, I didn't really have any more notes for the rest of this video, so I'm not going to get into that. I want to move on to the rest of the stuff because I'm already over an hour right now. And I appreciate you hanging in here with me. The next one is how to make a smart car purchase. I think Dave gets most of the stuff right. All right, I'm going to skip.
As we've been doing this millionaire research, one of the 4-year-old car that the average millionaire drives a 4-year-old car with 41,000 miles on it, and of course it's paid for, and they haven't had car payments in decades, which is how they became a millionaire, because the average car payment now is over $500, about $504 a month over 84 months. If you invest $504 from age 30 to age 70, you'll have somewhere around $5 million in your Roth IRA. I hope you like your car.
Can't argue with this math.
Knowing that cars lose 60 to 70% of their value in the first 4 years, is to buy a quality used car, unless you have a net worth in excess of $1 million. Then if you want to buy a new car, you can afford to take the loss on it. But the worst car accidents do happen on the showroom floor. Well, Dave, I'm always worried about buying a used car.
Sorry,
well, what are you driving? If you're driving a car that you bought 2 months ago, it's now a used car. If you're driving a car you bought 5 years ago, it's a used car. What are you driving? Listen, the vehicle quality is so high now that we get 300,000 miles out of a car. Most of these cars run and run and run and run and run if you have to take care of them. So, don't buy a new car unless you've got a net worth in excess of $1 million. Now, How do you negotiate the best deal on your car? Well, the same way you do a lot of things. There's a couple of key.
I did want to point out, though, I do prefer to buy used cars myself, as I said multiple times, but the way he framed it was a bit of a straw man, and I don't think that was intentional, but it's not the fact of why people that still buy new get stuck on buying new. It's not, oh no, I don't want to buy a used car, like they feel like they're dirty for buying it, or they feel like they're poor. The argument that I always hear people make is they want to know that they have maintained it, that the maintenance history is done properly. That's their argument. So I feel like he kind of framed their argument incorrectly. But again, you know, you can get a used car with 5,000 miles on it that's maybe had one oil change. People who can afford to, and sometimes people who just spiral their debt out of control, will buy a new car and then decide they don't like it, they don't like the color, whatever, and trade it in and get something else with no miles on it. So that if you buy that car, they ate the depreciation for you, and if it's had one service, there's only needed one service, that's as close to a new car as you're going to get, and not eat that depreciation that the first owner did for you.
Keys to negotiating. One is, he with the most knowledge wins. So study. Learn about.
This is a good point too, but I missed the earlier point. Yeah. Most of the cars, you can't just say most of the cars. There's a lot of cars as car guys we know that you generally want to avoid. I'm not a fan of Kias or Hyundais. They come with great warranties, but that's because they have a lot of issues, and so they've built that warranty into that car so that when, and I've seen it, when the people that have 1,000 miles on their Kia need an engine, it's covered, but you're still without your car for a week, and that's a massive hassle, and that doesn't give me confidence as a consumer. So you do have to do your homework. If that car you like and think it's pretty, or your friend has, and now you want one, is what you want, are there a lot of people complaining about an issue? So I wouldn't just buy anything and think I'm going to get 200,000-300,000 miles out of it. You got to kind of figure it out, which he kind of says. But again, this is where I'm starting to agree with more of the last few of these videos. But there's one more point he comes up to in a little bit that I'll point out. Direct contradiction to the last video.
About that car. Go on Trader.com, go on Kelley Blue Book and Edmunds.com and look up stuff about the car, Google the car, read articles about the car, look at different versions of the car, different packages that are on the car, the luxury package, the standard package, the two-door, the four-door, the different engines that are in that particular car. Learn all about a Honda Civic if you're going to buy a Honda Civic.
Or an Accord.
People impulse a big purchase like a car, that makes you stupid. You don't.
I do want to say, I saw so many people just show up day of. Let me talk them into a car. Let me convince them based on their needs what kind of a car they should buy, with no plan, no market research. They'll just show up and say, I need an SUV with 3 rows. And they put it in my hands to impress them with something. And they buy a car. And where I worked, I don't really feel bad about anything I sold anybody. The dealership I worked at sold good, well-maintained cars and auctioned anything they didn't want to deal with that they thought would be problematic. But, you know, you could have probably gotten a better deal if you set a plan.
Impulse that. You study that. And then pay cash, of course. Now, most of the time paying cash means that you are doing a bank transfer. But sometimes you can walk in with the cash and just lay it on the table. It's not that much money. I mean, $7,000, $10,000, $15,000, whatever. It kind of blows a dealer.
There's the contradiction I wanted to get to, and this is one of the last points that I'm going to point out where it's like, what is he on? What is he smoking? Sometimes you can walk in with the cash and just lay it on the table. It's not that much money, $7,000, $10,000, $15,000, whatever. Well, for most of us, I mean, if you really feel that way, Dave, you could feel free to to Venmo me or Cash at me $7,000, $10,000, $15,000, whatever. I mean, you know the lot of people you're talking to. That's a lot of money. And secondly, just like George, his employee there, his teammate there, said in the last video, don't walk into a dealership with $10,000 cash. Here's the IRS. And I did link this in the description too, if I remember correctly. Report of cash payments over $10,000 received in a trade or business, motor vehicle dealership questions and answers. So, yeah, if you show up with that much cash in a single transaction, physical cash, the dealership has to fill out a form, 8300, and to disclose that you paid in cash. And again, this is to look for organized crime or drug dealing or tax evasion. So the vast majority of people aren't gonna, if you made your cash legally, it's not going to be a problem, but you're getting flagged. So, and this would be the situation where they knock on car loans all the time. But if you're between showing up with cash to pay for the car at a dealership or getting a loan for $10,000, you will take a small credit hit, but you can pay off that loan at any time, anytime you want. So again, Googling, does it hurt your credit to pay off a car loan early? And the snippet from Capital One comes up. Paying off a car loan early can cause a slight dip in your credit score depending on your credit profile. Any dip is likely to be temporary as long as you're practicing responsible credit habits with other accounts. So again, you go on a Saturday and your bank's not open and you can't get the check or whatever, you can go get the loan. It's not the best thing to do. The best thing to do is to prepare and have a plan, but you can take the loan to get out of there on a Saturday. And then when you get the information for the loan, you can go to the bank, you can move money around when the banks are open and just pay off that loan. Again, this would actually probably hurt the bank because they have to pay kickbacks to the dealership for financing the car, and they're planning on making the interest off of you, and you're not going to pay a ton of interest if you suddenly go pay off the loan. So I had one customer that did this. He couldn't move money around that day, but he wanted the car. He had the money. I believe him, he had the money because he wasn't arrogant about it. He wasn't trying to impress me. I just asked him some questions, got to learn about him, and he just ended up financing the car because it was easier to finance it that day and move the money around later. And then he just basically paid off a $56,000 Toyota Sequoia because he could. So it's an option. I wouldn't say it's a go-to, but anyway, back to it.
Dealer's mind, but certainly if you're buying from an individual, when you put cash on the table, it says we have a deal. It doesn't say, oh, I need to check with my banker. You ever sold a car on Craigslist? I need to check with my banker, and then you never hear from them again. I'll take it, but my banker will do it, and never hear from them.
This is funny to me. Or I need to talk to my wife. That's the classic. I always hated that excuse because it's like, why are you looking for a car if you haven't talked to your wife? I would always recommend people don't use that as your escape from the dealership. Well, I need to go talk to my wife. You kind of just look weak. Because if you really have a plan and you're a serious buyer, you should have talked to your wife. So a lot of times they might just be saying that, and I get it. But again, I still think it sounds kind of weak. Like you can draw a hard line in the sand, and if they won't make that line, you just get up and leave. You don't need to go talk to your wife. You should have talked to her before, and you come in with your terms. You make a reasonable offer. They don't want to meet it, I'm not interested, and you get up and leave. You don't need to talk to anybody. And if you're not serious about buying it, don't go into a dealership to test drive because they're only there to sell you.
Again, but when you lay cash on the table, there's no, I need to check with my banker in there. It's a done deal, baby. It's locked in, right? And listen, don't get married to one car. Be prepared to walk away. Listen, when you bought something emotionally, even the most inept seller recognizes the body language changes.
We were trained for this.
I mean, you guys know when somebody's bought something, right?
Make it emotional for them.
Even though they haven't done the deal. The negotiation's over once they know you're married. I'm married. I have to have this car. So just...
I can't tell you how many times a wife has been ready to buy a car and the husband's kind of the one trying to be cautious and they're not on the same page, and you sell the wife and they buy the car. Be on the same team as your spouse.
Be quiet. Let them talk, the seller, that is. Tell them, you've looked this car up, you've studied a lot, this seems a little high. And then be quiet. Let them talk.
There was also a concept I was taught when I was selling cars. They taught you, once you present the numbers, it's this stupid little game. But once you present the customer the numbers, show them the bottom line, you don't say anything, because the first person to talk loses, in theory. It's a stupid game. Doesn't necessarily mean that you win, but the moment you see them react or make a face and you do anything, and suddenly you're like, well, you know, I might be able to throw in, now they know that you, the seller, have more to offer, and they can hold out a little bit longer to see what else they can get. So of course, if the buyer reacts first, you know, that's when we were allowed to talk again. But yes, say what you got to say and see what they do.
You can negotiate online. There's a lot of ways you can do it. You can have the car inspected. And a good thing to do, too, is check with one of our endorsed local providers on the insurance side.
Okay, yeah, he does say shop for insurance here, and I think that was about it for this video. I just have 2 more to get into. The next one's really good because I completely agree with him on this one, and it is leasing versus buying. Now, I am not a fan of leasing, and being that financial information is what he does, I really think he hits the nail on the head here.
Dave, how are you?
Better than I deserve. What's up?
I'm for a couple weeks. I've been
This
loving
person's story is not
My
as
lease
important,
is,
so I'm going to skip it.
My car is up.
Oh,
This
yeah.
question for you. My lease is on my car is up this month.
Good.
I want to know, should I lease a car or should I buy a reliable used car? But the lease payments for the car would be relatively cheap. It's not, not a BMW. It's like a $200. All everything rolled into it. No fees due at the beginning at the signing.
Gotcha.
What would you do?
I really appreciate you calling and asking the question. It's because it's a great question that's on the top of a lot of people's minds. So here's the thing. Leasing a car is an alternative form of financing a car. So if we were to take the actual lease payments on the average lease, in your case $200, right, and you were to take the buyout at the end of the lease, those are the 2 financial numbers you would need to put into a financial calculator, and then you compare that with the sticker price of the car, the manufacturer suggested retail, right, you would find that this money that you're borrowing, that you're renting, is costing you, on average, 14.2%. That's the average lease yield. Now, a lease is not technically borrowing money, so the Federal Trade Commission does not make them reveal that to you. Were this a car loan, you'd get this little ridiculous federal piece of paper that shows you exactly what your money is costing you, what your annual percentage rate is, and if they were to do that on a lease, you would find the typical lease, it varies, but I'm saying the typical lease is around 14%. And I've analyzed these things for 30 years and looked at them and run them through the financial calculator. Smart Money Magazine did a full expose on them. Consumer Reports did a full expose. Consumer Reports' actual comment at the end of their full piece of research on a whole bunch of leases did a much more thorough job than I have done. Said their quote at the end of the article was, the most expensive way to operate a vehicle is to lease it.
So, yeah, to sum it up, don't lease a vehicle because you pay money to its signing and you pay rent. We'll call it rent. They don't call it rent. It's your lease payment. But money due at signing is not a down payment. It doesn't build equity in the car. You're not renting to own the car. Only if you choose to buy the car out at the end of the lease is it at all, I can't even say a benefit, because the amount of money you pay to lease it at the beginning offsets the price you could buy the car out from. Now, it's not the worst, if you're in a lease, it's not the worst thing in the world to buy the car out for it, and particularly with something like a Toyota 4Runner. In the time frame, right up before COVID, if their lease was running up in 2022, even though they blew a bunch of money to lease the car in the first place, if they were to go and then decide they liked the 4Runner, that one that they leased, because that buyout price is pre-negotiated at the time of when you sign the lease, you know how much you can buy that vehicle for at the end of the lease, and they can't go back and change that number. So people that ended their lease, or their leases were ending in 2022 after the used car market exploded, if you had something desirable like a Tacoma or a 4Runner, there was a good chance that your buyout price was going to be better than what you could get it for on the used market. Now, other than that, the dealers made their money off of you, so you really didn't do well. But you find yourself in that scenario, look at the market and just never lease a car again. That's what it comes down to.
And this is even if I'm going to finance a car on a 5-year payment plan or something like that.
Okay. Well, number one, I'm going to tell you don't finance anything. And if you did, coming out of this, I'm going to tell you to, we'll come back to that in just a second, but I'm going to tell you to pay it off as soon as possible, not for 5 years, because that's the second part of our equation, and then we'll come back.
This video.
In all the years I've been working with people who started from nothing and built wealth.
Yeah. He just gets more into that. At the end of it, he does basically say, if you want to buy out of the lease, you can, because you're already in it, and that was the major mistake. The other points I wanted to touch on leases is, if you lease a car, you're responsible for all the minor services. So at the beginning of the life of the car, you're responsible for the oil changes, the tires, the brakes. I would say probably even the clutch if you burn that out, because that's a wear item, so that's on you. The lease company is only responsible for the major repairs that aren't covered by warranty. So most of what's going to go wrong in that new time period is wear items or warranty covered items. So the lease company has the least amount of liability on this car. The liability is still on you and the warranty and the manufacturer, but you're also dealing with a lot of cars. They're brand new cars. These cars come off lease with 5,000 miles on them sometimes. Like, a lot of people who are leasing cars aren't putting miles on them, because again, you have the overages. So people get a false sense of comfort in thinking that, like, oh, well, I leased the vehicle, I don't really have to worry about the maintenance. But you're responsible for all the maintenance the car should need, minus the warranty. So I don't really see it as taking the liability off of people. That a lot of people always explained it to me is, this is why I lease cars, because I don't have to worry about the maintenance, and it's great. And then I just get a new one all the time. Well, oh well. So I just wanted to follow this last one just to be kind of comical. The video is called "Don't Do This to Get Chicks." And I could go into another rant about this as a whole separate subject, but I also really agree with this video.
Budgeting for free today. How are you?
Dave, Jade, good to talk to you guys.
You too. Merry Christmas.
Hey, Merry Christmas, absolutely.
So I will say this video did come out. They released the video a day ago, but I'm guessing this happened in December.
I got a quick question for you. So I'm 27, single. I live in Austin, Texas. The home prices out here are astronomical. I'm in baby step 3B. I've saved up about $50,000 for that down payment, and I have about $10,000 in an emergency fund.
You're in good shape. Well done.
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. My question is that I'm still single, and my good buddy Roy has been saying for a long time, Kevin, ain't no one is going to want to date you when you're driving that old Honda Accord. You need to get you a sports car.
What?
You're good.
Tasty snacks, if you're still here. Old Honda Accord.
Your buddy Roy is an idiot.
Oh, man.
I love Roy. I really do.
I do too, but Roy don't know how to pick a woman. If a woman is going to come...
Hey, thanks for watching, man. You can catch the rest of this later, but I really appreciate you hanging out as long as you did.
To you because of the car you drive, you're not going to get much of a woman.
Oh, man.
That's
yeah,
a word.
I pretty much agree with you. Wisdom in a multitude of counsels. I'm going around.
Dude, I was on my
this is
third
the
date with my wife in a 1974 Monte Carlo, and we went. I was telling her that I had $2 to my name, and I was telling her someday I'm going to be a millionaire. And we went across the railroad tracks, and the muffler fell off my car. We've been married 43 years.
Wow.
She's been through bankruptcy and been a millionaire twice, riding around with that guy with no muffler on his car.
Yep, absolutely.
Tell Roy not to give any more women advice.
Oh, man.
I agree with you on that. I do, but I also have a little bit of a bug. I'd love to have.
Okay, now we're getting to it. Ain't got anything to do with women or Roy. Okay.
He was blaming it on
you
Roy.
have a
He
bug.
eggs it on.
Okay, now we got
I'm
it.
a stickler. I'm a stickler, and I don't spend the money on myself like that. And so
Okay.
I don't know. Is it okay?
So what are you trying to buy?
What you got
It's
the
so
fever
weird.
for? What you got the fever for, Kevin?
Well, I'd like to get me 2016 Camaros that
Oh,
I'd like to buy.
sweet.
It might have some miles on it, something fun.
Sweet.
What's it cost?
I was thinking about pulling about $30K out of the down payment and taking that to go get me a toy is what I'm doing.
Well, what do you earn what do you earn annually?
$120.
All right. So.
And you're single. Yeah, we've
And I'm
established that.
single.
You're looking for a woman. Yeah, okay, that's right. All right. So listen, if you make $120,000 a year, you have $50,000 in cash, and you want to delay, as a single guy, I don't want to buy a house right now. We're going to delay buying a house, and we're buying a car.
I wouldn't do this. If I was in the shape he's in, I would be buying the house. There's cheaper. I would encourage him to get the sports car too, but there's cheaper sports cars you could get. You don't have to dump $30,000 on a Camaro. You get a $15,000 sports car. But anyway, I mean, he's not in bad shape.
That is used and is way less than 50% of my take-home pay. That fits the Ramsey guidelines.
Yeah, I'm locking in my vote.
Yeah.
I like that.
Now, you don't think it would be, because I earmarked that money. I put it in for a down payment.
Well, that's
what
why
I've
you
been doing for the
earmark it,
past
so it makes
couple
you
years.
stop and think. You are trading 2 years of buying a house for the Camaro.
Okay.
That's what this
Okay, so I
earmarking
gotta
does.
weigh
It
that.
makes you make that decision. And you put both of those on the scale. 2 years on one side of the scale, Camaro on the other side of the scale.
See, like, I'm thinking there's a compromise in here, but in this point, like, this is like these videos towards the ends where I really start to agree with Dave a lot more. So that's why it kind of surprised me when I delve into this, and I found actually way more I agreed with him than I thought I was going to going into it. So I thought I'd just be honest about that. But it's like I said, this guy can afford this car if he wants to, but again, it's a choice. You have to decide. And my point for showing this video, even though this bridges into another topic I'm not going to cover tonight, is if you're doing it for you, cool. If you're doing it because you think you're going to pick up girls, like those of you that watch this that know what I drive, I bought it for me. I bought it because I wanted it. I've had girls ask, what are you compensating for? And occasionally I'll get girls to compliment the car. But if I had bought this car that I have now, thinking that I was going to look cool or worried about what everybody else thinks, I would have probably ended up disappointed with that purchase, because honestly, I get way more compliments from guys, which is not what I'm going for. And at the end of the day, most people just don't care. What's going to impress a woman when you take her on a date with your car? Since this is automotive related, and I'm not going to give dating advice either, it will impress her if your car is clean, if the heat works in the winter, if the AC works in the summer, if your car doesn't look like a piece of crap, if you wash it, if it doesn't make funny noises or smell bad. This is what women notice about cars: cleanliness, reliability. They don't really care, other than sometimes the badge. They can recognize status symbols if they're not into cars. So if you drive a BMW, it's a BMW if she's not a car person. If you drive a Porsche, it's a Porsche if she's not a car person. But that's it. They don't really care about what model or how much you paid for it. They don't think about the mileage if they're not into cars. Cleanliness and reliability is going to say way more about you to her than what you chose. Unless she's a car person, then she's going to have her own opinions. So, do what you want. Do what you want for you. Don't think of these as status symbols to impress people. And that's a lot of what Dave Ramsey says that I had agreed upon, is don't play keeping up with the Joneses. Don't go get that big SUV because your neighbor got the big SUV and you want it now. Get it because it fits your family and it fits what you need it for. But that really kind of sums up all I wanted to get into with this. I'm not going to play the vast majority of this video because it's already gone. We're looking at an hour and a half now. So thank you to anyone that has stuck with this video. This is probably the longest one I've done so far, and I could have done a better job of trimming it, but food for thought next time. Anyway, thank you guys. Good night, and I'll see you next time.